Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation and the great pleasure to be with you today. I think this is an absolutely crucial discussion about the future of the Romanian economy and society, but also for the wider European Union. We can draw a lot of lessons together from the recent crises and recoveries, and also how the economic and social model of Europe has developed in this period. Before jumping to the answers, which have been requested, I would like to do a little bit of theory just to assist myself in the discussion subsequently, because I think it's a very interesting anniversary now. There was an important book on economics written 100 years ago and another one 10 years ago. The book written 100 years ago was written by John Maynard Keynes, and it was called A Tract on Monetary Reform. This is a famous book for one quote, which says that the long run is a misleading guide to the current affairs. In the long run, we are all dead. But this also continued with a warning to the economists, because it said that the economists set themselves too easy and too useless tasks if in tempestuous seasons they can only tell us that when the storm is long past, the ocean is flat again. What was the message of this page in Keynes's work in 1923? He basically emphasized that problems like mass unemployment, runaway inflation have to be taken very, very seriously, and the governments cannot just wait until these problems solve themselves, but they have to be active. They have to use all different instruments of the economic policy. The book written 10 years ago was published by Mariana Mazzucato, called The Entrepreneurial State. Why is this an important book? And it should guide us in developing a new model, because it highlights how the public sector and the private work together to create value in the economy. And in this past year, this book also made a big impact on thinking and economic policy, because also the European Union started to develop the tools on technology policy, innovation, investment strategy, also from the European Union budget, to ensure that there is a better balance, right? We are not trying again the combination of a vibrant private sector and the passive state, because the passive state is a myth. We need an active government in order to assist from many, many angles, to provide funds for experimental investment, but also to ensure that there are human resources available, trained, educated experts, workforce, in order to provide the foundations of a prosperous economy. Now, from the angle of these two authors, how did Europe perform in this recent crisis? I think we just need to compare the 2010 crisis and the 2020 crisis with the pandemic. And we should admit that Europe has made a big progress to develop the economic paradigm. The approach in 2010 was the so-called austerity, when indeed for about 2 years the problem was allowed to take some time to solve itself, until we were at the brink of disintegration in the European Union. And only in 2012, when the very famous Mario Draghi was saying that he would need to do whatever it takes to save the Eurozone and the single currency, the paradigm started to change. And it was only in 2014 when investment came into the center of economic governance in the European Union, with the so-called Juncker plan, when the role of the European Investment Bank and also the national promotional banks started to be taken seriously. Now, as compared to that, action was very serious and robust in 2020, because we learned the lessons, and the European Union immediately responded with increasing the fiscal capacity of the European Union through the so-called Next Generation EU program. So basically an 80% jump in the increase of the European budgetary capacity. But it was not only about money for infrastructure development, it was also for social safety nets. The European Union came out with a 100 billion euro program called SURE, to save jobs at large scale and prevent the rise of unemployment, which actually took place in the United States, but Europe somehow managed to prevent the same type of social disaster. If I can add one point, because this is indeed a very important aspect of this evolution, that environmental sustainability, which previous speakers already touched upon, also started to play an increasingly central role in economic and social development and also the national plans. Yes, in 2010, we issued the so-called Europe 2020 strategy. Very few people remember this. Why? Because this just passed without some kind of assessment. But sustainability, resource efficiency, for example, climate objectives, they were already present. But probably they were present without the necessary level of ambition, which only came in 2015 after the Paris summit on climate, and also without the necessary investment tools. Perhaps Europe is still lacking the sufficient capacity to support the so-called Green Deal, which is the main game in town, the main direction and orientation for the national plans. But the Green Deal was also saved at the time of the pandemic. And the European Union, the EU institutions, and also within the nation states is trying to ensure that we can go ahead despite the political headwind, right? Because sometimes political support starts to disintegrate around such objective. But we try to stick to the objectives of the Green Deal because of the understanding that economic, environmental, and social sustainability go hand in hand.